There's an adage that goes something like this. If everything is important, nothing is important. And if something is always true, it probably isn't. And it's had me thinking about hyperbolic or extreme language and how much damage it can do, from affecting our credibility to our ability to move things forward, conversations forward. It's doing a lot of damage to conversation today on a global scale and between people, relationships. It takes a lot of personal work and maturity to have more or less serious conversations that allow everyone to have a voice. Now, a caveat. This video is focused on this type of conversation or these types of situations. I'm just as guilty as the next person of using hyperbolic language when I'm talking to friends and I'm trying to be funny, or in my writing and storytelling, in lots of casual conversations. It's a word that comes from the Greek and it means exaggeration. It's a figure of speech that uses extreme, intentional exaggeration to emphasize a point, to evoke strong feelings or add humor, as I mentioned before. And it's not meant to be taken literally. We exaggerate to emphasize, like when we say, that took forever, or I'm starving. And this is normal in informal contexts. There's a type of unspoken agreement that we're using it for these purposes. So when I mention that it can hurt our communication, it's when we're speaking to communicate ideas that allow for more serious conversation around ideas, around research, around looking for the facts, trying to get closer to truths, conversations that help us move forward, to reach agreements, to find synergy. Now, let's look at some examples, some simple examples. This always happens. This is the worst thing ever. That completely destroyed the project. This will change everything. So you can see extreme language, words like always, never, everyone, or disaster may feel powerful in the moment, but they often do more harm than good. And let me go into a little bit more detail about this. In academic and professional settings, precision is very important. Your audience expects you to communicate ideas clearly, accurately, and thoughtfully. When you write a research paper or you give a presentation or offer an idea in a workplace discussion, your word choice signals how carefully you've considered your message. When language becomes exaggerated, it can weaken that message. So if every challenge is described as a complete disaster or every mistake as unacceptable, listeners can begin to question your judgment. The focus shifts away from your main point and toward the tone of your language. Again, exaggeration can be powerful in some contexts, in storytelling or in informal conversation, but in formal contexts, credibility is being built through measured and specific wording. Precise language shows critical thinking, it shows professionalism, and it shows respect for your audience. With regards to critical thinking, extreme words leave little space for nuance. And in academic and professional environments, not everything is good or bad or completely right or completely wrong. Most issues are layered and require careful examination. When we rely on absolute terms such as always, never, perfect, or impossible, we close the door on complexity. We suggest that the topic has only one side, when in reality, it may involve multiple perspectives or conditions or interpretations. The academic and professional realms actually consider complexity quite well. They value the process of finding balance and the ability to acknowledge both strengths and limitations. It's important to take into consideration all angles so decisions can be made with as much truthful information as possible. Evidence is also a priority. Evidence is the information that can be supported by data, by research, and by clear examples. There are many phrases you can use to share your ideas in a more precise way or in a more thoughtful way. I've created a handout with a list of these words that you can find in the video description. So using measured language does not weaken your argument. Instead, it demonstrates intellectual maturity and strengthens your credibility. Often in my new videos, I talk about leadership because throughout our professional life or our academic life, we'll be asked to take leadership roles in different situations. It may be a position in a company or a role in a company, or maybe a task that we work on with a team or a group. And when we lead, others will look to us not only for direction, but for stability and sound judgment. When we use extreme or hyperbolic wording, we begin to express an emotional intensity and often forget to be precise. We can appear reactive rather than thoughtful. Now, strong feelings are not the problem. I want to underline that. However, if language is exaggerated or absolute, listeners may interpret the response as impulsive instead of carefully considered. This can reduce confidence in the message and in the speaker. So measured language, by contrast, shows that the speaker has taken time to reflect, evaluate the situation, and choose words deliberately. Now, this doesn't mean inauthentically. I want to highlight this. You can be authentic and still be calm and precise in your communication. So whether you're the leader of a company or the leader of a team or a group, or whatever the scope and size of leadership will ask you to be clear and composed. We've talked a bit about extreme language and speaking, but we need to watch out for it in our academic and professional writing as well. In this section, I want to start with an example. Look at these two sentences. In the first one, we have, "This policy always fails." Now look at the alternative. "This policy often produces inconsistent results." The first one may seem powerful because it's short and absolute, but the word always leaves no room for variation or exceptions or context. Without strong evidence, such claims can be overstated and may cause your audience to question the accuracy. The word often, on the other hand, allows for complexity, and the phrase inconsistent results identifies a specific concern. So this version sounds analytical rather than emotional and is more precise. The difference is subtle but important because precise language strengthens, again, your credibility, because it reflects careful observation and thoughtful evaluation. Now, to be sure, especially when speaking, we may fall back on extreme wording or hyperbole. It seems to be something we've become accustomed to, and it's a way to grab people's attention. If you're just having fun, go for it. But if you want to share messages more thoughtfully and more precisely, take your time and really consider what words you're using. So to conclude, if you want to share a message professionally or academically, or in any conversation where you would like your thoughts to be taken more seriously, you can measure your emotions, avoid exaggerating, look for nuance, check your communication, identify the stream words. If you hear yourself saying these words repeatedly, ask yourself if what you're saying is really true. Then replace your wording with qualified language. Instead of, for example, saying always, you can be more specific and say often or in many cases or frequently. Instead of everyone, you can be more specific and say many people, some researchers, or several participants. And remember, add evidence to support your statement with clear examples. In academic and professional speak, you might say research suggests, or data indicates, or based on recent findings. But in a more personal conversation, you might take ownership of what you're saying and of the situation and say something like, from my experience, or I've noticed that, or in my opinion. Again, if you want more examples, you'll find them in the handout. Another consideration is to allow the space for complexity. In today's conversations, we're forgetting that life and people are complex. No one holds the entire truth. And when we stop listening to each other, we stop allowing for insight into other angles and other possibilities. One of the biggest learning experiences for me was when I was a liaison between two different groups in an organization. And I would go from one group believing I'd heard all the facts, only to talk to the other group to hear other truths that painted a much broader picture. And this was very humbling. And I learned not to always believe that I have the whole truth. And I've been in situations as well where people had great ideas, but got sidetracked by exaggeration. So going back to complexity, here are some sentences you can use. It depends on. One important factor is, while this is true in some cases, or this is what I know up to now, you'll find that nuance is very powerful. Now remember, the information in this video is to help you communicate more clearly when you want your message to be heard, to help make change. To do that, we can put our thinking hat on, leave room for complexity, and protect our credibility so that the power of our message can be heard. Measured language is powerful if you're here for the long run. I hope this was helpful. Let me know your thoughts, and don't forget to read and be kind. Bye for now.